Takadosh Boker or Daf Yomi Masechet Batra Daf Kufi Amud Aleph 105A1. We're just going to start on the Mishnah Kuf Daled Amud towards the bottom. The Mishnah says we're talking about right now. If a person comes and he says that he's going to sell Mida Bechevel Ani Mochelecha Hen Chaser Hen Yeter. So if you remember yesterday we were speaking about Mida Bechevel. Mida Bechevel means mamash like according to the stick. So you're measuring it b'diuk, exactly the way that it's supposed to be. Now, when you say in chaser and yeter, it means more or less. Yeah? So, 1 second, but I said both. I said also midah becheven, and I said in chaser and yeter. So, it says the Mishnah, bitel in chaser yeter, right? Midah bechevel, meaning that I take the lashon acharon, which is basically, since I said at the end more or less, the more or less annulled the midah bechevel. The midah bechevel was, I'm going to use the, how do you call the measuring tape, right? To come and to measure. Right, that's a midah mechevel. But then I said more or less. The more or less is going to annul it. Hen chaser and yet midah mechevel. What happens if I said the opposite? More or less, we're going to measure it. Right? Midah mechevel. So says the Mishnah, bitel midah mechevel and chaser and yet divrei ben Nanas. Those are the words of ben Nanas. So according to ben Nanas, right, we're always going to go after the lashon acharon. Fine. Okay? Until here clear. Yeah, it's very simple. Says the Gemara. Kufei Amud Aleph. Says the Gemara, Amar Rabbi Abba bar Mama Amar Rav. Says Rabbi Abba bar Mama in the name of Rav. Cholkim alav chaverav al ben Anas. So they are arguing on ben Anas. What does that mean? Right? That means they're arguing that it's not that we always go after the lashon acharon, right? And therefore we have a problem. So says the Gemara, what does that mean now that you're going to say that you're arguing? Right? Cholkim alav chaverav ben Anas. My kamash b'lan Tanina. We already learned this once. It says this is in Bab Metzia Daf Kuf Bet Amud Aleph. מעשה בציפורי באחד שצריכה מאחד מחברו ב12 דינרים זהובים לשנה בדינר זהב לחודש. Remember we said, I'm going to come and I'm going to rent from you a bathhouse. It's going to be 12 dinarim for the year. 1 dinar per month. And then what happens? It's a leap year. So now what happens? If you tell me it's 12 per year, this is a year. But so it's 12. But if you're going to tell me 1 dinar per month, it's 13 months. So it's 13. So what's halacha? Obama said, the story came in front of Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Rashbag, and Rabbi Yoseh. And they said, divide the money. So he has to pay 12 and a half. Yeah? He says, no, but Zman and Karbon, they didn't know. They never knew. Yeah, they didn't know. Yeah? Which means that at the beginning he said 12 dinarim for a year. Dinar zav lechodesh. He doesn't know, right? Remember that the leap years were only added afterwards, so they didn't know. Yeah. So says the Gemara, if it was from over there, I would have thought to say hatamu the mehada kahada be. There, I could actually come and I'm going to say that because mitzad echad, you're going to say that when you're going to rent out the dinar lechodesh, you're retracting from the Shnei Masar Zuvim L'Shana. The Hechal Meimar, or sometimes you could actually say Pirushi Kamafadish, you're explaining it. Aval Hacha, but here, Tevadai Kahadarbe. For sure you're retracting. Say Imalo. So I would say the really Rashvaga and Yoseh are not arguing on Ben Anas. Kamash Malan comes teach you that they are arguing on Ben Anas. Yeah? Everyone understood why? One more time. If I'm going to come and I'm going to tell you, right, I'm going to sell you 1 acre of land, right, by the stick. And then I tell you more or less. Is the more or less arguing on the by the stick? Or is the by the stick arguing on more or less? It's obviously arguing. There's no way. It's not that you're explaining. It's a contradiction. I cannot come and tell you that I'm selling you by the stick, meaning by the meter stick, and then I'm telling you, by the way, it's more or less. It's 100% arguing on each other. In the case over there by Bab Metzia, maybe I was explaining myself. I went and I told you, I'm doing it 12 dinarim for a year. 1 per month. Is it for sure arguing? It's not for sure arguing. Maybe by Met, it's only going to be a 12-month year. And I'm explaining to you, by the way, breakdown. The breakdown is 12 dinarim per year, but 1 per month. So therefore, the pshat is over there, you have an explanation. Either he's explaining, or maybe he's retracting. But you have both options. So in that case, Rashbag and Rabbi Yoseh argue on Ben Anas. In our case, there's no 2 options. it's for sure 100% arguing. So because of that, that's what we say. I would have thought to say maybe Rosh Baga. No, Kamashpan, say machloket. Say machloket again. Rosh Baga Rabbi Yosef against Ben Anas. Okay, next. Amar Rav Yehuda Meshmuel says Rabbi Meshmuel. Zo divrei Ben Anas. This Mishnah is Ben Anas. Aval Chachamim omrim Chachamim say halach achar pachot shebilshonot. We're always going to go after the one which is going to make it that you're mafchit, right? The koach of the lokeach. Okay, that means basically the Chachamim. That means we're not going. I don't care whether it's the first one, the first lashon, or the second lashon, right? But rather, right, what we're trying to say is that you're always trying to minimize the strength of the lokeach. Okay, meaning you're the seller. Who are you looking after? Yourself. So since you're looking after yourself, you're always going to try to make sure, right, that you're looking after yourself. How do you look after yourself? Whatever is the worst of the two lishonot. Whichever one. Doesn't matter which one was first or which one was second. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter in the order of the events. It all depends on which is mafchit, the order. Right? The Gemara is going to ask a contradiction to this. Zo, right? Velo sfira lei. One second. When it says Zo, these are the words of Ben Anas, and Shmuel does not hold of it. Ravu Shmuel daber nitavayu. Kor b'shloshim ani mochel lecha. Yachol lachzor bo afilu b'sa'a acharona. Kol b'shloshim se'a b'sela ani mochel lecha. Rishon kana. This is one second. Now let's go not to the renting of houses, which is a Gemara in Bab Metzia. Let's go to another Gemara. The Gemara says, if I'm going to sell you a kur for 30 slaim, and he explains, right, and he says like this, so what does that mean? So we know that there's going to be 30, right, se'ah in the kur. So he comes and he says, it comes out that I would have thought to say that he could come and he could retract even in the last se'ah. Why? Because if I'm selling you a package deal, and the package deal is a kur, which equals 30 se'ah, so even if I give you 29, I didn't finish the deal. So as long as I didn't finish the deal, I could retract. But if I'm going to come and I'm going to tell you kur bishloshim, a kur with 30 se'ah, right? For a kur for 30 slaim, which is basically the 30 se'ah, right? And then I add in 1 for 1. Because that's what you're doing, actually. You're doing $1 per piece, right? That's what you're doing. So if you're going to now say se'ah besela, rishon kana. The second that you give him 1, you acquire the 1. You give him 2, he acquires the 2. 3, he acquires the 3. 4, he acquires 1 by 1. So therefore it comes out, right? He cannot retract. So it comes out that when you're going to tell me kul b'shushim se'ah se'im besela, right? You're going to tell me now sotrot zu etzu, because at the beginning it's mashma, right? That it's one purchase, one sale. Now it's mashma that I'm separating the sale. Kilu, at the beginning I had one sale of 30 se'ah, right? And now I'm having a sale of 1 by 1. I'm selling you 1 by 1. In the one of 1 by sorry, in the first one of 30 se'ah, you could retract, right? Why? Because it's one package deal. So as long as I didn't give you the full package, you didn't get the full service, you could retract. So when I tell you 1 by 1, even though I'm giving you 30, but if I tell you 1 by 1, the second I give you 1 by 1, that's it. Yeah, I give you everything. Okay. So he comes and he says like this. He says, right, Ella, but rather, right, you're right. Zo usvirale. It's this, and he holds of it as well. Okay. So says the Gemara, umi svirale. He says, does it really be'emet Shmuel hold like Ben Anas? Shmuel says, right, right, what are we talking about? We're talking about that the guy came in the middle of the month. Meaning we were in the middle of the month, right? And therefore, in such a case, which means that according to this shita, it all depends when are you coming. When you come to collect the rent, right? So if you're going to come and you're going to collect the rent, here we're talking about you came in the middle of the month. So since you came in the middle of the month, the extra month, right? Remember, this is the extra adarbet, right? So therefore, if you're going to tell me now that you came in the middle of the month, that's what we're going to say, split it between the two. Half. What happens if you came at the beginning of the month? he has to pay the maskid the full amount. He has to pay the full amount of the rent. When he comes at the end of the month, he doesn't have to pay rent that month. Right? Kulola socher. Everything goes to the diyar. Huh? Because he's muhzak in the money.
Just that leap year month.
Yeah, only the leap year month. We're not talking about the regular month. Right, we're talking about the leap year month. Again, the doubt is only in the leap year month. On everything else, you're obligated to pay me. Okay?
At the end of the month, say sorry.
I don't have to pay you. Why? Because I have the money already in my pocket.
And at the half of the month, you only pay half.
Yes. But why do you only pay half in the half of the month? Because since we have a doubt whether you have to pay or not, so it's a doubt, you have to divide the money in between them. At the end of the month, who's muhzak in the money? Who has the money? The renter. So the renter has the upper hand. If he comes at the beginning of the month, so now the renter has nothing what to do, because now the renter actually has to pay up the full month. Okay. Daf Kufei Amud Bet 105b says the Gemara, Ela, but rather leolam velo svirale. Really, be'emet, he himself does not hold of this concept of right benanas, because if you're going to say right, we asked from Kul B'Shoshim Seah B'Sela. So he says, "V'atan time amai." What's the reasoning over there? Mishum the tafis, because each one is grabbing on to half of the schirut. Hachanami, so to hear hatafis, he's also grabbing on to half of what he has. Meaning, the entire concept, remember, by money matters is who's muhzak. Meaning, many times, right? If you have a doubt, do you have to pay? Not pay? You know what the main general rule is? What does that mean? You want to take money out of somebody else. The other guy is muhzak. It's incumbent upon you. The onus is on you to come and bring the proof. And therefore, the concept is, he's muhzak. He's muhzak means he's got the money, right? And if the money's in his hands, it's a different world, right? Because he's always got the upper hand. So he says, Amar Ravuna says, Amri Beirav, they said in the Academy of Rav, Istira, me'amana, right? Me'amai. So he says like this, if the mocher comes and he says that the price is Istira, which is the me'amaot. So he says, right, for whatever it is. So basically he's going to come and he's going to say, listen, it's let's say it's one Istira, which that's like $1, which is 100 cents. So me'amai, right? Me'amai Istira. So he says, so Istira, which means like this. If he said Istira, then he said me'amai, and then the price evaluates. So again, he's going to get me'amai, but that's the last lashon that you just used. If you said me'amai Istira, you only get the Istira, which means that sometimes it fluctuates in value, right? So for example, nowadays we always know that the dollar is always the dollar, and you always have 100 cents in a dollar, right? Now the only thing is the dollar biachas to other currencies go up and down, right? But the dollar is always a dollar, and the dollar is always 100 cents. Many times, right, when they were doing their calculations, it would fluctuate a lot. Like, for example, let's say you're in Eretz Israel. So in Eretz Israel, they use also dollars and also shkalim. So if I'm going to say $100, yeah, exactly. It's always when Matashinochlam, right? So therefore, if I'm going to say $100, and then now you're going to say 370 shekels. Now, 1 second. All of a sudden, the dollar went up or down. And we're not talking about 1 or 2 shekels. We're talking about that made a big difference. But you said both. You said $100, 370 shekels. So now which one do you go by? Do you go by the shekels or do you go by the dollar? So that's the question. So he's saying you always take the lashon acharon, whatever you said last. So if you said istira me'amai, me'amai. If you said me'amai istira, it's a istira. So says the Gemara, my kamashman, what's it coming to teach you? So what's lashon acharon? Do you grab the last thing that you said? Rav already said it once. The Amar Rav, if I was over there when it was a machlok between Rashbag and Rabbi Yosef, that they said yachloku, I would give everything to the maskid. Why? To the balabait. Why? Because since he said dinar zahav lechodesh, which means he said, I'm renting out for you the bathhouse for 12 per year, 1 per month. The second that you said the last thing, which was 1 per month, kamarnu. And that's like benanas. So skip the brackets. So says the Gemara, I would have thought say kaparushe kamafarish again that he's explaining it. But remember, we already mentioned that there's an explanation and there's a contradiction. Right here, it's an explanation. Kamash Malan comes to teach you, right? That we don't say that. But rather, really, Be'emet, Rav was there, you would give the entire thing to the maskid because he holds like Benanas, that we always take the Lashon Acharon. Okay?